Ubisoft. For some, that name conjures up memories of playing Rainbow Six Vegas 2 at 3 AM with the boy who's trying to get the sickest upside down rappel kill.
Aim for their leader!
And to others, well, there's a reason many people say their new logo looks like an actual pile of shit. But there's no denying that they control a bunch of great franchises like the aforementioned Rainbow Six and The Division. But there's one Ubisoft game that tends to go under the radar whenever the company gets brought up, and that game is I Am Alive. And there are a few good reasons for this. I Am Alive is one of the best games I've ever had the misfortune of playing. Just when it seems like it's about to hit that sick-ass BS 50-50, it always somehow manages to stack itself directly onto its own neck. But before all that shit, I should probably explain what the game actually is. Released in 2012, I Am Alive is a third-person post-apocalyptic survival game that was developed by Ubisoft Shanghai. However, development for the game actually started way back in 2003 by a company called Darkworks SA. Nothing else is really known about the development cycle until about 2008, when Darkworks announced that due to a mutual decision, they would no longer be working on the game and that it would get finished by Ubisoft Shanghai, who announced that the game would be released sometime between April 2010 and March 2011. However, in typical Ubisoft fashion, both of those dates sailed on by with zero new information being released, and it wasn't until June 2011 when an Australian classification website had a note published that said that the game was slated for a release in the late summer of 2011. Which, as you can probably work out by the fact that I said released in 2012, didn't fucking happen either. Ubisoft CEO Yves Frenchman stated in 2010 that the team had decided to totally re-engineer the product. Then in 2011, the original developers, Darkworks SA, was placed into compulsory liquidation, which was basically them just trying to sell all their shit off before they went under. Then at long last, on September 29, 2011, a new release trailer was, well, released. However, it only had a vague date of this winter. Finally, on January 23rd, 2012, I Am Alive was released on PS3 and Xbox 360, and everyone's reactions were a resounding, meh, it's alright, before moving on to other games. Then, on August 23rd, 2012, a whole 7 months after the game was released and then forgotten about, like My Will to Live or Bethesda's ability to make a good game, Ubisoft announced that the game would receive a PC version, which wouldn't get released until September the 6th, 2012. A whole 4 months after Max Payne 3 came out, and just 12 days before the release of Borderlands 2. So yeah, I Am Alive didn't really hit the ground running, especially when many people thought the game was cancelled at one point. So after 9 years on the conveyor belt, what kind of afterbirth crawled out on the other side? Well, let's take a look. Presentation wise, right from the main menu, you'll notice that I Am Alive has a very limited colour palette. You might even say it's almost a singular colour palette. Everything's fucking grey! Like, I get it, the world is supposed to be shit and everything's supposed to be covered in dust, but it's almost like the game's black and white at times. Silver lining, I guess that makes I Am Alive one of the best games for colorblind people. Now, granted, this does give everything a very eerie and unsettling feeling. You can't usually see all that far in front of you, so you're never really sure what's directly in front of you. Seeing a shadowy figure in the distance puts you on edge, because you're never sure it's someone who can help, or someone that's going to shish kebab you without thinking twice. However, even though this uncanny valley effect can make the game more unsettling than it would normally be, when you do end up in a clear area, you can see why they chose to blur your vision. Textures tend to be pretty low res across the board, and character models and animation, while not awful, do leave a lot to be desired. Like I said, this was a 2012 game, and it was released in the same year as Borderlands 2 and Max Payne 3. And while it might seem unfair to compare I Am Alive to a different company's game that runs on a different engine and has a different art style, let's not forget that Ubisoft themselves would release Far Cry 3 in December of 2012. Something, favorite son, something. There is some explanation for some of this, however. I Am Alive started development on the Unreal Engine 2, an engine that was released in 2002. Apparently, during those 9 years in development, no one thought, you know, UE2 is getting pretty old, and hey, look, Unreal Engine 3 just came out. Why don't we just port all our shit over? By the time this game was released, Unreal Engine 3 was already 6 years old, and Unreal Engine 4 was being shown off at developer conferences. You know, there's missing your mark, and then there's just not taking the shot, and that one really is on you. Oh yeah, and before I forget, the sound is fine. There's nothing to really talk about except for this one sound effect. Whenever you open a gate, most of the sounds in that animation are fine, but the last sound effect of actually getting the gate to stay fully open, it goes full 2007 240p unregistered hypercam tutorial levels of compression.
Hurry, open that gate.
Other than that, the voice acting is all fine, the gun sounds pretty meaty, and there isn't much that comes to mind that sounds out of place bad, save for the gate sound. The voice acting is also just fine, it does the jobs. There aren't really any standout performances.
Did they say what they're doing? Why they're here?
They've been searching for survivors.
I knew it. Well, tell them we're ready to go.
May 23rd. That's almost a year ago.
You're sneaking. We'll find you sooner or later.
Do you hear me? Don't touch me!
Don't be like that. You know, I can make your life a lot easier if you just cooperate.
Except for May's voice actress. Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, May is fucking adorable.
Do you remember what this place looked like before?
Not so much. I was just a little girl then. Not grown up like now. Do you like my teddy bear?
Oh, my baby girl.
Mommy.
And on the topic of sound, the music is pretty meh. It does the job where it needs to, but other than that, it's pretty forgettable. One thing you won't be forgetting anytime soon, however, is the goddamn musical cue for draining stamina. You see, you have this stamina bar, and any strenuous activities like running, climbing, or human sacrifice starts to drain your stamina. And it gives you this musical cue, so you're always aware of it, so get used to hearing this for 3 hours. Okay, I get the fucking point! So speaking of stamina, I should probably tell you a bit about the gameplay. So right after the intro cutscene ends, and you turn the mouse sensitivity down, we're introduced to the game's most important mechanic. Stamina. The white bar at the top represents how much you can run, climb, hang, or brutally murder. While straining yourself, the stamina falls, but it will recover after resting for a second or two. To help with this, you can find an item called a python? Piton? I don't know how you say it, but the icon looks like a dustbuster. Putting one of these in the wall will let you create a rest point to regain stamina, and believe me, you're gonna need them. If the white bar goes all the way down, you get put in
extreme effort mode,
where you have to mash the sprint button to keep going. Doing this lowers your maximum stamina capacity, meaning the bar won't recover all the way until you use an item that could increase it. And all three of the attentive people in the audience may have noticed that I said the sprint button, while the quick time event clearly says the left mouse button. I forgot to mention that sprint is fucking left click in this game. Like, I get it's important in a game like this, but like, sprint goes on shift. That's a deeply ingrained thing, you don't change that. But what's that, you're asking? If sprint is on the left mouse button, what does shift do? I mean, it must be very important if they have to move sprint for it. And the answer is absolutely nothing. Why? How the fuck should I know? The game does also pretty heavily emphasize climbing, but this isn't the Mirror's Edge style of climbing. This is more Tomb Raider style of climbing, where there are very obvious ledges for you to climb. You can't climb absolutely everything, which is weird. Like, for example, here it looks like I should be able to climb over these boats, but for some reason I can't. Or I should be able to jump over this gap on these train cars here, but for some reason the game won't let me. And that's because you don't have true free movement, you just kind of find ledges and climb them instead. Also, it does that thing that all climbing games do, where you want the character to grab that one ledge above them, but they somehow manage to do absolutely everything except the one fucking thing you ask, before just jumping to his death like a fucking brain-dead lemming. And that wouldn't be so bad, except in this game, you burn retries, or lives. And not because you made a mistake, but because your character's latent Down syndrome just kicked in. Anyway, after the climbing tutorial, you head into the fucked up hellscape that was once your home via the sewers. And it's here you have your first encounter with a local, who basically tells you to fuck off by waving his gun around at you, and your gun hasn't got any ammo, so naturally you back off slowly and leave the guy alone. Then, a bit further on, you get jumped by a guy with a machete, and he's a lot more aggressive. It's here you learn one of the most unique things about I Am Alive: encounters and how to mind game people. Yeah, your gun doesn't have any ammo, but they don't know that. So you lie to the guy and tell him to back up towards a hole in the ground that you promptly yeet him into. And this is probably the best thing about I Am Alive. When being approached by a group of dudes, in any other game, your first instinct is to try to either shoot them all or go into some kind of combo crowd fighting system like Mad Max. But in this game, you just don't have the resources. So when you are approached by a hostile group, you can surprise kill one with a machete and then pull your gun on the rest. Some of them will shit a brick and surrender, while others will act tougher and not give in. Some might even rush you when you're not looking. If you hold them at gunpoint for long enough without doing anything, someone might even think you've either got no ammo or simply won't shoot. At which point, they just stop listening to you and they'll start walking towards you. So you have to use that in-depth dialogue option the game doesn't have to explain the situation to him.
They ain't got much ammo, none of us do.
Now, this does make combat more interesting than simply point gun, shoot gun, repeat, and it definitely does seem like it opens up a survivor's economy, but like the ecstasy of busting a fat nut, the magic fades quickly. For example, it seems like coming up against a defensive person might mean you can choose to kill them for what they have or leave them alone. Because bullets are quite rare, and therefore pretty valuable to you, so it could have been an interesting choice to decide whether or not to use a very valuable item and hope they either have something good, or whether or not that bullet was actually worth their supplies in the first place. But none of them ever have anything, like at all. Like, I get this is the apocalypse, so no one's walking around with piles of gold or Shrek 2 on DVD, you know, any of the valuable shit, but to not have anything is kind of a wasted opportunity. And all these people really do is serve to slow you down, because now you have to slowly back away, otherwise they shoot you in the back of the head. Also, most encounters with groups of the bad men typically play out the same each and every time. Surprise kill the guy with the gun, shoot the tough guy with the machete, and then smack the chicken shits when they surrender. If they don't, shoot one of them and then yeet the other guy off the ledge. Or into a fire if you want them extra crispy. On top of all of that, sometimes people don't actually die when you shoot them, meaning they just kind of roll around on the ground yelling in pain and give you the opportunity to walk up to them and execute them with a machete, which, just like everything else in this fucking game, doesn't actually do anything other than waste your time, because they're already dead. It's not going to change anything. You don't get the option to save them, and it would be kind of cool if you did. For example, using rare resources like a first aid kit, for example, to maybe save someone's life, and in exchange, he'll tell you about where his gang is keeping a decent supply of loot or something like that. Or maybe you save him, and then he immediately wants to get revenge on you by trying to kill you later on down the line. Something like that would have made the world feel more alive. But no, it's only really there to indulge a mass murdering fantasy. You also get a bow at some point, which can be useful to get a quick kill when no one's looking, but people apparently aren't scared of some dude cosplaying as Legolas, so they just bum rush you and you have to go back to the gun anyway. Also, you can only carry one arrow throughout the entire game, and you have to go and collect it after every single kill, so fuck that, honestly. Then there's the actual world exploration, which never goes beyond me go to place to get thing. Place blocked. Me climb to place. Me got thing. Me go home now. Me home. While moving around the world, you can find various resources on the ground, conveniently bathed in holy light for some fucking reason. Each of these resources will restore either health, stamina, or stamina capacity. You can also come across other survivors, who the game calls victims for some reason, and give them certain resources to help them out. Doing this rewards you with a retry, which is basically just lives by another name, and let you restart from a checkpoint after a death, or manually if you manage to somehow fuck yourself over like I did by running out of stamina in a long climbing section. Now, when the world just starts to seem really bland, the game does actually try and turn it around. Later on, you encounter areas of heavy dust. In these areas, your vision is cut back to almost zero, and on top of that, your stamina will constantly drain. The only way to regen your stamina is to climb above the dust cloud, so you're constantly looking for pipes, ladders, ledges, anything you can use to try and get higher up. And despite how annoying that sounds, these are some of my favourite sections of the whole game. I had to actually look for resources. They weren't just presented to me bathed in holy light. I had to plan my route around the city and find other ways of getting from A to B to minimize my time in the dust. Seeing a blurry figure moving in the dust was disconcerting, as I had no idea whether they were a scavenger looking for supplies or someone I could help. Maybe even a guy with a gun trying to kill me if I got too close. The world felt eerie and everything had this desperation about it that nothing in the game could match. Then, at some point, you get a gas mask off people you kill, which slows down the amount of stamina you use while in heavy dust, which by all means should have ruined the tension and the feeling of needing to think ahead, but somehow it doesn't. Sure, it means you can last longer without needing to scramble for a pipe to climb every 20 seconds, but not being able to see 3 feet in front of you meant there was no way to plan that far ahead. Honestly, they could have just made the whole game like this, and I probably would enjoy my time with it a lot more, but guess what? They didn't. Instead, a lot of the clear areas just kind of became a go from A to B kind of a section, with a bit of climbing in between and not much variety. And the only thing that really kept me going through them sections was hoping there'd be more heavy dust along the way, and maybe progressing the story. And speaking of the story, fucking 10 out of 10 segue there. So, I'm pretty sure no one cares about spoilers, but just for that one person that's still not got around to playing this game yet, if you don't want anything spoiled, go to here. Alright, we good? We good. The game kicks off with someone watching a camera of the game's protagonist, who's never actually given a name, so I'm just going to call him Roomba, because he's always cleaning up other people's shit. Anyway, Roomba tells the camera that he flew out east when an apocalyptic event happened, simply known as The Event. Very creatively named there. It's never fully explained what the event actually was, but it caused a shitstorm of earthquakes and dust clouds, and basically sent the US fuckside. And I'm guessing the rest of the world, which would explain why the UN hasn't come charging in to try and fix everything, but it's never actually explained. Anyway, Roomba explains that he spent the last year walking back to his hometown of Havington, which after a quick Google search turns out to be entirely fictional. He explains that he wants to get back to his apartment to see if his wife Julie and daughter Mary are still there. Spoiler alert, they're not. Then while leaving the apartment, he spots a little girl calling for her mum and does what any reasonable person would do. He starts chasing her through the streets, which is totally not sus. His reason for doing this is that he thinks the girl is his daughter. I mean, surprisingly it turns out that she isn't, and is in fact a girl called May. May explains that her mum disappeared while they were out looking for supplies. Interestingly enough, when you first enter Havington, you can actually see a woman getting dragged away, but you can't do anything to stop it, which is pretty neat, I would say. Anyway, May has a walkie-talkie with a guy called Henry, who's apparently been taking care of her. He then says that there's a dust cloud coming, and the best place to hunker down would be to go to a mall. Turns out May is actually sick, and she needs medicine, so to go and get medicine, you climb up to this crane and grab someone from a construction site. You give May the medicine, and then you start to make your way back to Henry's place. You have to go through a subway, and on the way there, you pass some dudes that are grilling some meat, which is heavily implied to be human flesh. There are human-sized cages everywhere. Most of these cages have blood and skeletons in them, and funnily enough, on the endgame screen, it says, "You have eaten human flesh," which is just great, honestly. Once you get back to Henry, he explains that there's a survivor camp somewhere offshore, and that a boat's coming to take everyone there. However, to contact the boat, he also needs to get a radio transmitter. Roomba gets mad and says why can't he just get off his ass and go and take it himself, which leads to one of the most awkward scenes I've ever seen in a game.
A radio transmitter? Why can't you get it yourself?
Isn't that pretty? Henry! Henry!
Because I can't.
So you go and get it from the ship, and on this ship you find the only NPC that you can actually choose to rob, and it's this guy, just chilling out in the open with a ship full of machete-toting psychopaths.
Oh no, please don't take those ones! You worthless bag of poo!
So when you come back with the transmitter, Henry explains that he's found where May's mum's been taken. Turns out she was kidnapped and taken to a place known as the hotel to be an unwilling prostitute. Well, it's never explicitly said she's a prostitute, but that's what's pretty heavily implied, and when you actually go to the hotel, it's pretty clear that, yeah, that's what they were doing there. Anyway, you go and get her back, and then Henry says you need to signal the boat, so you have to go to the top of a high as fuck building and set off some fireworks. On the way there, you talk to some dudes, take some tomatoes, commit a small genocide, and then go off to the pier where it turns out Henry's been de-wheeled and May's missing. At this point, Rumba gives his pistol to May's mum, like the fucking brainlet he is, so you'll have to be stealthy with a bow. But the game never explains that stealth is even an option, because you always get ambushed by people, and the stealth mechanics are so broken, I literally just ran past everything to get to May. Then you help the pair escape a flood and get onto the boat, at which point Rumba says that he's not going with them because he still has to go and find Henry and his family and be the hero, and then the game ends. It cuts to the final cutscene of someone watching, presumably the last recording in his camera, while crying over his old things, and I guess this person is implied to be either Julie or Mary, his wife or his daughter. I don't fucking know at this point. Then the game just ambushes you with a stat screen. As you can see, it only took me 3 hours and 16 minutes to complete, and I wasn't rushing through a lot of the levels, so I can only assume that they wanted to have more, maybe even have a happy ending, or an ending where he has to die to meet them or something like that, but I guess time constraints, or Ubisoft just wanted the project to be over, just said, yep, fuck it, that's an ending, stamped it and shipped it out the door, which is all really sad to me. Like I said, I Am Alive is one of the best games I've ever had the misfortune of playing. Because under all the annoyances, I can see glimpses and flashes of a great game. With more work and less setbacks, this could have become one of Ubisoft's flagship games in a time when opinions on the company were starting to sour. And in my opinion, it would just take a little bit of flesh on the skeleton they've already made, and the game could have been great. Maybe add a reputation system so that if you complete bad actions like robbing or killing people that you didn't need to kill, it would impact you with other survivors and they wouldn't accept your help. Make injured enemies come back later in the game for revenge, or let us heal them and maybe they'll forgive you and give you supplies in return. Making defensive survivors guard more resources so players have to decide whether the bullet is worth it or not. Dialogue options during combat to try and convince someone to run away. Maybe being able to rob people you've intimidated, or given the option to bribe your way out of things with supplies. And that's why, despite all the annoyances, the bad and downright unrewarding ending, the buggy controls, and the overall staleness of the game, I wouldn't be mad at a remake. And it's a shame that because of how poorly it sold, Ubisoft just locked it in their vault of shame, never to see the light of day again. I Am Alive is a game that I think more people should have played, but not one that I can recommend people try these days. If you really want to get your hands on it, you can get a copy from Steam or Uplay for $16 or your regional equivalent, but just know that it's already too late to save what could have otherwise been a hidden gem.